So we have here 19 in the 19th chapter of Ezekiel begins with a lamentation. The idea of to lament, it's a woe, it's a loss, it's a grievous loss. It's like losing a child or having a spouse die or something that's happened that didn't have to happen and it happened. And that's what we call a lamentation. It's a woe, it's a sorrow. And here, this lamentation is for the people. But God is also lamenting. We see where God pleads and where he doesn't want to do what he's going to have to do because of his holiness. In 17, he gives that riddle of the two eagles, the one eagle that came to the cedar and took off the top and took it to a faraway land. And the vine that was there was reaching towards the eagle for sustenance. And the same thing happened with Egypt. And the second eagle came and did the same thing. This is, again, a reminiscent of the captives that go to Babylon. Some of them will look to Babylon for the sustenance. And what did we see historically with Jeremiah? That they wanted to go down to Egypt. They didn't want to stay where God had told them to stay. And so it says, will you prosper? No, it says you trespassed against me, have scattered you to the winds. This was not God's idea. 18 is this whole thing about the fairness of God. They're saying God isn't fair and God's not equal and your God, God, Yahweh is not equal. He goes through and says, what do you mean? I'm going to be fair. The soul that sins is the soul that dies. You're saying proverbs that are not true of me and not true of this situation. It says you are the ones that are unfair. You think you can act like this and I'm not going to move. And then we have this lamentation, and it's to the princes of Israel. And at this time, Zedekiah was still reigning. He still had his entourage. He still had his officials. Remember, later on, about 70 men go down and leave to Ramah with him, and then are brought back up and are murdered. So you get the idea that he has all these people around him telling him what he wants to hear and propping him up. And he was a weak man, as we saw. One guy wanted to put Jeremiah into prison. He goes, okay, do that. And then another one comes along and says, you need to take him out of prison. He goes, okay, do that. And he's not called the king. He's called the prince. And watch your mother, a lioness that lays down with a lion. She nourished her whelps. Again, talking to the prince, but also talking to the nation. And a young lion came up and was taken to Egypt. And then we have another lion came up and was taken to Babylon. So the idea as Israel here has brought up these lions and they get taken away and to create these desolate places. These lions thought they were strong, thought they could devour men, and yet what happens is they are taken in snares and they are pulled away. And he's talking about how this happens also. This is going to happen to the nations. It says against him on every side. So we're talking about how also this is talking about the leadership and the princes. It's talking about Zedekiah himself. This is talking about the government of Israel. The government of Israel gets destroyed and taken up to Babylon, and also volunteers to go down into Egypt. And again, we're talking about this in this lamentation, that you are taken in. And the second lion went up among the lions and became a young lion and began to catch prey and devoured men. And he knew all the desolate places. And the nations were against him on every side from the provinces and spread their net over him. And he was taken in their pit. And they put him in chains and took him to Babylon. And it talks about what the nation is. And again, we're talking about both this happening to the nation of Israel and to Zedekiah. And there's a lamentation of this. This isn't what God wanted. He wanted his people to call out for him and him to make them strong nations, him to make them a good nation, him to give them the water and the rain and the crops and the cattle and the safety and the security and the economy, all those wonderful things. We're going to see when we get further down the road the level of debauchery. It isn't that, that they stopped in some medium plane. We tend to get kind of soft and think these people are hanging around doing nothing, and here comes this mean old God coming in and wiping them out. No, we find out later how they were acting like whores, that they were going after other lovers, and some of the despicable things that they were doing with their lovers. And they were also murdering any children that came from the husband, which is God, and they were murdering children, and there was all kinds of, like I've said before, bad economy and usury and stepping on the poor and oppressing the strangers. But we'll get into that later. But there is a sadness here Even though they've acted this way, there's a sadness and a lamentation. Lamentation on the heart of the prophet, on the heart of God, but this has to be. He says, but she will be plucked up in fury, and she will be cast down to the ground. And when the fire has gone out of the rod of her branches, which has devoured her fruit, so she will no longer be a strong rod to be a scepter to rule. He's destroying the kingness. And this kingness will not come back till Christ becomes king. But there was never a true Israelite, Hebrew king. After this, again, there were leaders and there were governors, but they were put there by overriding powers. They were not a king. And so we look at 20 as a new one, and it came past in the 7th year. So now we're 7 years into the captivity of King Jehoiachin. And so we are still 4 years away from the loss of Zedekiah and the loss of Jerusalem. So again, we're talking early on. And the elders come to ask him about the Lord, to inquire of him, because many times people were wanting to know divination. They want to know security. They want to know if they should do this or that. They want to have Jehovah, but sometimes they'll go to any prophet and all the prophets. It's almost like, you know, you're going to a car lot and you go to different car lots to see which one gives you the best deal. You get the idea these guys weren't pursuing Jehovah for Jehovah. They were pursuing which God's going to give us the best deal, which God's going to give us the best protection, you know. And they didn't realize that you're approaching God when you have sin between you and this God. He goes, I will not be inquired by you. They came to inquire of him, and he says, I will not be inquired by you. Will you judge them, O Son of Man? Will you judge them? Because cause them to know the abomination of their fathers. And by inference, their own abomination. These abominable acts have not been paid for. He goes back and gives them a bit of a history lesson. And that's mostly what chapter 20 is that I, the Lord God, in the day that I chose Israel and lifted you up unto the seat of the house and made myself known to them in the land of Egypt. He's going back to Egypt to make his case that I saw you there. And this is similar to what we saw in 16 where he talked about he saw them and had compassion, that they were this bloody, discarded thing just thrown out by the side of the road. And so here he goes, I chose you, and I brought you out, and I was going to take you into the land, and I told you to cast away your abominations from your eyes, and defile not yourselves with the idols of Egypt. I am the Lord your God, but you rebelled against me. And he talked about they didn't cast away, and they didn't forsake the idols, and I was wrought for my name's sake that it should not be polluted before the heathen. Listen, God cares about what he calls the heathen. The heathen are not something that he doesn't care about, but he wants to be spoken to correctly by the heathen. And they were polluting his name. You know, he wanted to have a good name among them that they might come to him. That's what this is about. The promise of Abraham was not just for the Hebrews, the Jews, the Israelites, for all nations of the world might be blessed. So, it says, but I was wrought for my name's sake, that it should not be polluted before the heathen, among whom they were in the sight that I made myself known to them. They're among the heathen. And so I brought them out of Egypt, and I gave them my statutes and laws, and I gave them my Sabbaths, and I wanted to set them apart. I sanctified them. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness, and despised my judgments. And I was wrought with them for my name's sake. It wasn't just because you're disobeying me. It's like for my name's sake. This is not what I do. If you're going to bear my name, then this is what you're going to do because you bear my name. And I will not have it polluted before the heathen. He says this 2 or 3 times. He cares about what we call pagans. The word pagan and heathen is almost, we have to be careful. It doesn't sound like an epitaph. These people need God. They need their God. Elohim is their God. And Elohim is trying to get to them through Jehovah. And to set up this beachhead, if you will. And so, behold, I lifted up my hand among them in the wilderness. I would not bring them into the land of milk and honey. He talks about that because they despised my judgments and walked not in my statutes. Nevertheless, mine eye spared them from destroying them. He wanted to wipe them out, remember, with Moses. I am the Lord your God. Walk in my statutes. Hallow my Sabbaths, which is a sign between you and me. Now, this is a sign that you're obeying me. It's like This is how I know you're obeying me if you're keeping Sabbath. Now, for us Christians, it's not for salvation. And it was a sign only for those who had this covenant relationship. When I see you keeping the Sabbaths, not just the one Sabbath, but all the other Sabbaths, then I know that you're obeying me. It's like a physical sign, what you can do to show that you're obeying me. And yet they didn't want to do that. Nevertheless, I withdrew my hand and was wrought for my name's sake, that it should not be polluted in the sight of the heathen. He says that again. I lifted up my hand among them also, and I scattered them and dispersed them, because they had not executed my judgments and despised my Sabbath statutes and polluted my Sabbaths. And I polluted them with their own gifts, in that they came to pass through the fire of all that opened the womb, that I may make them desolate. He allows them, they were a self-fulfilling prophecy. Their own religion was making them desolate, and the Lord came down and was making them desolate. Therefore, Son of man, speak unto the house of Israel, and say, Thus saith the Lord, Yet in this your fathers have blasphemed me, and that they have committed a trespass against me. And when I brought them into the land, which I filled up, which I lifted up my hand to give it to them, and they saw every hill and all the thick trees, and they offered up sacrifices. The sadness is that he gave them this wonderful land, and they ran into it and set up groves and sacrifices to other gods. How disrespectful is that? How mean is that? How in your face and horrible is that? That the God of the universe came in and chose them and led them through and gave them this land. Instead of looking back to him and worshiping him with purity, they started worshiping the work of their hands, or the idols that they made up in their minds. Wherefore, unto the house of Israel, Thus saith the Lord God, Are you polluted after the manner of your fathers, and commit ye whoredoms after their abominations? And that's hard words. We're going to see the word whoredom come up more and more and more as we move on. And that's hard words. These people thought they were doing great. We're worshiping God, and our prophets have told us Israel's going to come and bring us back into the land. And he goes, no, you are whores. You're doing whoredom. It's hard for them to hear. You offer your gifts when you make your sons pass through the fire. You pollute yourselves with idol. And shall I be inquired of you? Someone who kills their own children to other idols, and you want to come and inquire of me? I will not be inquired by you. And that's which cometh into your mind shall not be at all. And you say, We shall be as the heathen, as the families of the countries that serve wood and stone. As I live, saith the Lord, surely with a mighty hand, and with an outstretched arm, and with fury poured out, I will rule over you. He is not going to let them go. They want to go. They want to go and serve these others, but he will not let them go. He has made a promise to Abraham. He's made a promise to David. He also made a promise to the captives, that they would come back into the land, and he would set them up. He's got these promises that he's going to keep. But he's angry with them. And then he says, As I live, surely with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm, and I will rule over you, and I will bring you out from the people that have gathered you out of the countries wherein you are scattered. And I will bring you into the wilderness of my people, and I will plead with you face to face, like I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness. Again, he's not making them leave. He's pleading. And once again, this is the heart of God, that I will plead with the sinners. And so here we have, he's going to plead with them. Why would he plead with them if he foreknew for them to go here for his mysterious will? That's not how this happens. This is not election. This is choice. This whole 2 books we have here is nothing but free will, but you chose wrong, and I'm pleading with you to come back. Why would you plead with somebody that you programmed to disobey you? But he pleads with them. This is rational argumentation. That's what this is. This is a rational legal argument. And I will plead with them. And I plead with your fathers, and I will bring you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bonds of the covenant, and I will purge among you those that are rebels and will transgress against me. This is going to burn out the rebels. O house of Israel, thus saith the Lord God, Go ye, serve every one of you as idols, and afterwards also, if you will not hearken unto me, and pollute yourself, and pollute my holy name no more with your gifts or with your idols. Stop polluting me with your gifts and idols. So he's going to separate those that want, but he's going to hold back those and bring in those, who will not be polluted by the idols. For in my holy mountain, in the mountain in the height of the Israel, saith the Lord God, there shall all the house of Israel and all them in the land serve me there, and I will accept them. All. There is no lost 10 tribes. All means all. All of Israel was there, and all of Israel will be brought back in the remnant, and Israel will grow like a plant there and grow up and be this mighty nation, and their king will come and they will accept their king, and then they'll move on and to this King of glory and stay there forever with their king. So he promises this. We get better at the end of 20. Talks about it in his holy mountain, and I will accept you with your sweet savor, and I will bring you out from these people and gather you out of the countries, and you will know that I am the Lord when I shall bring you unto the land. So many people are trying to have the nations bring Israel back, and have the Israelites bring themselves back, but God himself will bring them back. And you will remember my ways and all your doings, wherefore you have been defiled, and you shall loathe yourself in your own sight. Yeah, when they come back and see what they did and see how good their God is, they're going to loathe themselves. And you shall know that I am the Lord, when I was wrought with you for my name's sake, not according to your wicked ways, but according to your corrupt dealings. Moreover, the word of the Lord saying to me, set your face towards the south, and drop a word towards the south, and prophesy against the force of the south. Now, where was Ezekiel? He was north of them. So he's facing south to Jerusalem. And he says, thus, Lord, I will kindle a fire in thee, and I shall devour every green tree and every dry tree. The flaming fire shall not be quenched. And all flesh shall see that I, the Lord, have kindled it, and it shall not be quenched. And it's funny. So he's saying this again 4 years before it happens. And when he says this to these people, watch the humor here. He's talking to these elders, and they turn and say, Lord God. They say to me, this is what Ezekiel says to God. He says, don't they speak in parables? In other words, they're thinking this is all a parable. It's not real. It's not going to happen to us. He's speaking in another figurativism. Oh, don't they not speak in parables? No, not everything's a parable. They did not want to hear what God was saying in plain text. They said, he's speaking in parables. They're not getting it. But when we see, 19 was this lamentation, and 20 is another discourse that goes on for a few more chapters. And it gets pretty negative. It gets pretty harsh how God judges Israel and calls her a whore, and even describes her whoredom in very, very base terms. But remember, through the other prophets, he said, I will take you back. I will clean you and wash you. I'll take you back, and you will be mine forever. So there's a good side to all of this. We're going to push through it. Like I said, this goes till about 31 and 32. Then we have the fall of Jerusalem happens at that time. And then 40 through 48 is this beautiful idea of what the millennial temple, what we call the millennial temple actually. The temple of Messiah is what I'll call it. It's this temple that was never created. It was not created by Herod when he created his temple. He didn't follow any of these guide points. But when Messiah comes and sets up his temple, it'll look like Ezekiel 40 through 48. So we get to see the small bites and how it becomes big bites. But the heart of God is revealing himself in this imagery about how Israel has turned away from him, and it's very hard to hear, but it is the truth. They became whores, and they didn't want their God, but he has never really let go of him because of his promises. His promises are true, and he's a promise keeper. Thank you.